So how do we use comparative adjectives? Well, when you compare two or three things, it's very common to use the preposition than. Now, be careful because we have another word in English, then, and that's with an E. But with comparative adjectives, when we are comparing, we use than, T-H-A-N. Now let's look at some examples. Vancouver is smaller than Seoul. Seoul is a city in Korea. The department store is more expensive than the grocery store. Titanic was more interesting than Avatar. I'm sorry if you liked Avatar. Now, sometimes we use comparative adjectives with the words much or far, or when we're speaking, it's very common to say way. What does this do? Well, it gives the sentence, it gives the adjective a stronger meaning. We call this emphasis. Now, let's look at some examples. Saudi Arabia is bigger than Japan, right? Well, Saudi Arabia is this big, and Japan is, it's this big. So Saudi Arabia is bigger. But Canada is much bigger than Japan. You understand? It's stronger meaning. Okay, Brazil's soccer players are better than USA's, right? Brazil, they're better, right? But Brazil's soccer players are way better than Canada's. Now, another very popular way to compare is using this expression, as something as something. Now, this means it's the same, it's equal. And when we use as something, actually, we don't use comparative adjectives. We just use the normal adjective. Let's look at some examples. Remember, this means it's the same. So, Vancouver is as big as Boston. They're the same size. Peter is as old as me. We're the same age. Jenny is as nice as my old roommate. So it's popular to say, well, as something, it's equal, it's the same. But it's very popular to say it's not the same, it's not equal. So we say not as something as something. Let's look at some more examples. Brazil isn't as big as Canada. It's not the same. Toronto isn't as warm as Vancouver. Gas wasn't as expensive as I thought. And the dinner wasn't as good as lunch. So it's a very popular way to compare things. So we've studied using than, not then. We've studied using much or far or way to give the comparative adjective a stronger meaning. We've studied as something to say it's equal. And finally, we've also studied not as something. And this means it's not equal. If you'd like to practice this more, click on the link in the video.